Hey Amanda, thank you so much for coming on the podcast with us. Do you want to kick off by introducing yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Amanda. I've got the pleasure of being a reward and wellbeing leader. And what I love about that so much is I get to make so much improvement and progress in organisations, but also have a huge impact for actual people in the real world.
Yeah,
So over the years, kind of had loads of success stories where I've gone home at the end of the day and feel really proud of what we've achieved
Mhm.
and what we've done to make impact to people.
Yeah. I love that. We spoke to a number of people yesterday and it got a bit down at points. It was like how hard it is and stress and all, but you've started on a real positive note. You feel like, and even your job title stuff kind of jumped out to me at the start. So reward and well-being, you see those two things going hand in hand.
Yeah, so I think it depends on the size of organisation you work for. So I've always worked for quite smaller organisations where we haven't had the luxury of like big teams. So I ended up doing like a hybrid role, which has brought so much kind of variation. So previously it was at Gymshark for 5 years and kind of set up all things reward and well-being there. And was also there during COVID. And I think that speaks for itself when you think about well-being and the things we had to achieve and do. And now at Ovo Energy, again, they've got a more progressed proposition,
Mhm.
but it's again like keeping that live, keeping it relevant, and making sure people know about it, and bringing it to life for people in different ways. So yeah, leading reward and well-being there as well.
Yeah, nice one.
It's interesting to think of the hybrid role in a bit more of a positive light. I feel like quite often it feels like it actually presents a lot of challenges. Maybe because someone's been sort of presented with this extra workload to consider well-being on top of another job.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good to kind of see it in a positive light, like the benefits of
Yeah, and I
variation.
think even when the roles are split, those two people or teams are working so intrinsically together because a lot of the initiatives and a lot of the kind of things you need to do to solve the problems you might have, you need to utilize your providers.
Yeah.
And there can be a lot of crossover there as well. So that's why it kind of makes it easier when it's just one person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think that's the best place for it to sit alongside reward, or do you think it's dependent on the organ? Because we spoke to some other wellbeing leaders, and it's maybe more around health and safety, or occupational health, or even just solely a dedicated employee wellbeing role. Do you think there's a best, or what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely don't think there's a one size fits all. And I'm sure organisations, when they do that design, are thinking about all the different possible ways it could play out. But I think no matter where it sits, the connection with those other roles is so key. So, even myself now, I speak regularly with a health and safety person, and there's a lot of crossover. And I think it's around like you need to step back and think about the people. And do the people feel like it's connected, or do the people in the organisation feel like it's different? Because the tone of voice should be the same. We should be talking about each other's programs of work. The strategies should still be aligned, if not have a slightly different touch and feel. So I think you can put yourself in that employee experience hat,
Yeah.
and how does it then feel?
Yeah. And how do you know? We talked a little bit about data. How do you collect that feedback from people?
Oh, great question. How do you know? And I think you can start to collect data in so many different ways. And I think I'm going to talk about data today at the Watercooler event, but how do you really like just focus on data is so important, so that we all have so much data available to us, like as an individual in our own personal lives, but also within the workplace. And it's just really like, I don't know, sitting there with loads of post-it notes and just thinking about what are all the sources of information that we've got, and how can we understand them, and what do we know and what do we don't know.
Yeah.
And then when you kind of marry a couple of pieces of data sources together, what stories is it telling us? What hypotheses do we have? What's it proving, disproving? And I think that's where you get your real insight
Yeah.
to then drive forward with some action.
I absolutely love this. I absolutely love this. Yeah. So do you have like a kind of a balanced scorecard approach sort of thing where you have all these different sources of data and bring them together?
Not at the moment in the current role.
Okay.
To be worked on.
Yeah.
We've got an amazing data team, so we have that luxury. And we use Power BI and those sorts of things, but we need to build that. So we're currently really early in that kind of well-being journey around analysis. Again, there's some great initiatives, but like, how are they being measured, of the success, the impact of them? So we really need to start that journey around like data-driven culture. And I mean, without spoiling the talk, if you're going to come to it later, but what I always talk about the importance of data is because Wellbeing especially can be really emotive, and it can be really challenging topic, and you can often have some problems in your organisation which are really difficult to understand, to empathise with, but also to bring solutions for. And if people have ideas of solutions, it can be very much like you want to say yes all the time, because of course you want to fix everybody's wellbeing problems. But when you use data to drive that action, you focus on the right problems, and the problems where they need the most support and have got maybe a wider impact, rather than just because there's one manager over here or one employee over there saying, "Oh, it'd be lovely if you could do this."
Yeah. I always feel like that's a tension, isn't it? You want to give a really personalized experience to everybody, and as you say yes to everybody around their well-being, because it feels like the right thing to do. But as you say, well, things have unintended negative impacts as well. So you might launch an intervention here that benefits this team, but it really doesn't benefit these 3 teams over there. So that's where data comes in, right? Yeah. Really interesting. Like I said, I could just talk about data the whole time, but we won't. Should we ask about the role?
Yeah.
So what's your background? How did you start in your journey towards becoming a wellbeing leader?
So initially, kind of back in the day, feels like a very long time ago now, I was in kind of core HR generalist, so BP, world, partnering with organisations in a manufacturing organisation that produce yoghurt, so Muller yoghurt. I'm sure you've probably heard of it, or maybe have some in your fridge at home. And I spent my time there working on a project where we were kind of kind of transforming the engagement at one of our manufacturing sites. We'd recently purchased the site, and we had a lot of work to do in relation to pay and benefits. So that's kind of where I started to get involved in projects and thought, actually, I love this. Like, again, back to the kind of point at the beginning, have a huge impact on people and organisations. And then after completing that kind of work and that transformation, I then moved into the reward team. I spent a year in the reward team, kind of going through the annual cycle, dealing with all things pay, benefit renewals, annual windows, bonus schemes, pensions, etc. And that was like back in 2018, 2019 now. So wellbeing was really, really early days. And we kicked off a little wellbeing community in the organisation. What we're going to focus on, again, it was coming from more a health and safety perspective, but really partnering with that health and safety team. And then I finished my time at Muller and moved across to Gymshark in 2018, and they had nothing. Nothing. So the organisation was 200. It was a lot smaller than it is now. And they used to ask the local recruiter down the road what it was the best thing to pay somebody, and that was as sophisticated as it got. So I joined, and with the team that I was working with, built out everything in relation to pay and benefits and wellbeing globally. So in the UK, Hong Kong, Mauritius, Germany, and the US, and it was great.
Yeah.
Had absolutely the best time.
Yeah. It's almost quite good to do that, when you go, because again, we speak to lots of wellbeing leaders, and it could be quite daunting if you went into an organisation that does everything. They've done everything, they've tried everything, and it's almost like, how do you bring new life to it?
Yeah.
If you're starting from scratch, whilst there are obvious challenges to that, there are some benefits as well, maybe.
Yeah, I think it can be slightly easier.
Yeah.
Like starting with a blank canvas.
Yeah.
And so presumably with Gymshark and their sort of values and proposition and everything, it was that really core to them in terms of who they are, their identity, this work that you did.
Yeah, they always put people first.
Yeah.
And there's so many stories around how they did that and why they did that, and so many examples where other companies would have never even done that. I think they can be quite proud of what they've achieved commercially, but also the culture that they've built and how they've really supported people over the years.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe it is a bit easier to tackle this body of work in organisations where you are newer? I know they've had huge, fast growth, but they're relatively new compared to some of the organisations that we're meeting here and that we speak to on this podcast. Do you think it might be an easier ride for them, to really set that culture early on and those values, rather than like having a public sector organisation where there's just so much culture that's historic, and so therefore it's much harder to transform?
Yeah, I mean, I've never worked in the other side of the spectrum, so I don't know, but I think it's probably definitely easier in the new world, because I think, if you make some assumptions about like somewhere where they've got 100-year brand, you've got length of service of probably 20 plus years in some instances. You've got kind of cultural and norms and ways of working where you've got to create change, and you've got to get people to think about and do things differently. And we all know how challenging and how timely that can be. So yeah, I definitely think it's easier in that startup world, and that's when you chat to smaller organisations and you say, focus on this now. it'll be so much easier to do it now than it will be to do it when you're 300, 400, 500, 1,000, 10,000 people. So, giving them the encouragement to go early.
That's great advice. That's great advice. Especially if you're listening to this and you're a business who's growing, because I always wonder when's that point. So, I do not expect an organization of 10 or 15 or 20 necessarily to have a dedicated wellbeing leader. Actually, probably that falls on probably the chief exec and, the exec team. There's someone who's passionate about this subject. But at some point you want to bring a role like that in, I think, and the earlier you can do it, the better.
Yeah, and even if you don't have the resource for a dedicated role, I'm sure there's somebody in your organisation of even 10 that's got a passion for this. And it might be it's more physical health focused rather than mental health focused, but just start somewhere and start small, and don't get afraid of like how big it could be and how complicated it could get. Just whatever your idea is, just go and learn from it and grow. And yeah,
that's so true actually, because often what we do sort of find ourselves having conversations about is organizations that are doing things in a scattergun approach without a strategy, and that is there's definitely examples of where that's challenging. But yes, absolutely, it's valid that if you're smaller, you don't have the resource, just do something so that people know that you're at least you're aware and that you've got it on your agenda, and collaborate with your people to do something being meaningful, even if it's
to whoever those people are in that organization.
Can I just go back to just something you mentioned about Muller, because I think you said you gathered a kind of a community internally. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that looked like? And
so I did that at Muller and Gymshark and Ovo. So I think it's whether you're talking about reward or well-being now, it's so hard to like fly the flag as little man, or even just like the reward team. Like we're a small bunch of people in a large organisation. So who are your advocates? Who are your ambassadors around the organisation? And that might be some of your leaders. That might be some of your people. And how do you gather those people together to create change? How do you get their ideas and like help move their ideas forward? How do you understand the thoughts and feelings and what they're hearing and seeing around the organisation to build it into your action plan? So I just think like the power of those people and bringing them together and creating that team of just people that are really passionate about making a difference.
Yeah.
Just sets everybody up for success.
Do you do mental health first aid?
Yeah.
Yeah. So are they your mental health first aiders as well, or no?
It's not always. So some of them will be, but some of them won't be. So in kind of the current wellbeing kind of community we've built that are making the changes at Ovo, we've got people from the data team in there. We've got people from health and safety, but we've also got people from our people services function who are really focused on that employee experience, because they're the ones that are going to help us embed wellbeing as a red thread through all of our employee communications. So I think it's just like that army of different people that can help solve different problems.
Yeah, I love that, because obviously we run a community, right? And we are all about the power of community and helping people to create an identity for themselves as well. If they identify as, I'm someone who's responsible, or not responsible for well-being, but, has an interest in a certain level of responsibility. If I'm one of these advocates, then it gives them more ownership over that role than if they feel like they're, ploughing a lone furrow on their own within a part of the business.
Yeah, and I think that, like you said, that community is so important, because often you'll have if somebody is responsible for wellbeing in an organisation, they'll be the only person.
Yeah.
And that can feel so lonely. And you can feel like you're carrying kind of the world's problems on your shoulders. So I think connecting with other like-minded people in kind of the external community is so important. Like, I've met a few people the last few days at the event who I've always connected online with, but never actually met in real life. Where we supported each other, and we're all trying to solve very similar problems. And just working together to make that happen.
I had a little laugh to myself this morning when I was in the coffee queue, because I heard 3 different people say, "Oh, so great to meet you in real life," but different conversations. I thought, do you know what? Like we're an online community, which I think is so important to have that like access to the community anytime. But getting together in real life there's not a lot replaces it, really.
You do need it, don't you? You need it in snippets here and there,
especially when we're talking about human things. Like we need that connection.
I want to go back to your career again because I'm just really fascinated. So you moved from HR generalist, and then it sounds like it was the project work that brought you into this line of work.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you did along the way that really helped you to progress your career and well-being? So did you do a qualification? Did you have a mentor? Was there a moment or a particular project you worked on?
I definitely haven't done a qualification, so I've done my normal.
I wasn't
CS.
testing you, I promise you. That wasn't it.
Done not. Is there a Wellbeing qualification?
Well,
Good to know.
Yeah, it's a good question. No, there's no consistency around it, is the honest answer to that. Yeah.
I did have an official mentor, no, but I had lots of people around me who were kind of questioning my thinking, giving me encouragement to carry on, being there for me when I was having my really difficult moments or I was going into meetings and I wasn't getting the answers that I wanted. So definitely was kind of surrounded by the right people to make it happen. Was there a moment of where it kind of all came together? I don't really know. I think COVID probably helped shine a light on this in one way. So, it's a very long time ago now, but we did an event at Gymshark where during COVID, we shut down the office, well, the virtual office, because we were all working from home at this point, for one whole day. There was no meetings, and we did a virtual Wellbeing festival.
Cool.
And we partnered with a company called Xventure. We built a virtual world. So you went in, and there was like tents, like think Glastonbury, but Wellbeing at Gymshark. It was great. And again, that was built by a community of people that were in the Wellbeing community, where we had people from the PR team, where we had people from the brand team, where we had people from managing our influencer the team, and we managed to have like an event that supported people's well-being for the whole day, but it was all virtual. So we had DJs, so music to really uplift and bring happiness to people. We had comedians, we had like family activities. Obviously people had children at home, didn't they, a lot. What else did we have? We had like yoga sessions. It was all really like fun, uplifting activities, and there was just amazing feedback, like great vibes. Everyone was really buzzing and happy. I think it'd be really difficult to do that now in this world, because you'd expect it to be face to face, and there becomes so much more cost associated with that. But actually just recognizing people had put so much time and energy into the organization. People were working long hours because there wasn't really anything else to do. And just giving people that day back to just focus on themselves and kind of the well-being that was important to them at that time.
Yeah, that's a really cool intervention. I love that. I love that it was created by the community of advocates that you had, so that it felt like I'm guessing it felt like a more bottom-up approach, rather than here's something that we're doing and attend it please, or mandating it.
And I think like I've always led wellbeing from a bottom-up approach. I don't really ever remember a time like my manager or an exec member coming to me and saying, you need to go and do this. It was always, most of the time, just personal passion to want to create change and want to have impact, and pulling together ideas and presenting it. Well, 9 times out of 10 just doing it, and if they didn't want me to do it, they'd say no, or presenting it to say like, we're going to focus on this, can we do this?
Theme that came up yesterday as well was experimentation as well, wasn't it? And the importance of trying that. Not everything you try is going to work, but just trying it and getting the feedback and collecting the data and that side of things, I think that's really important as well, right?
Yeah. If it had already been done and it was successful, everyone would be doing it.
So true.
And there wouldn't be the problems that we have.
Yeah, so true. So true. Yeah, if there was just a prescription for this stuff, just do these 4 things and suddenly you're fine.
Yeah.
Everyone here would be doing it.
Yeah, and what we could do in our organisation could be the same as what somebody else does in their organisation. We could still have very different outcomes and very different impact and have results in different ways. So it's not a one size fits all as well. I think you've just got to learn and learn from your mistakes, keep going forward, keep trying to, not giving up.
Can we ask a bit about some of the tough stuff, some of the challenges and things that have come up, bumps in the road? And one of them, as an example, passion came up yesterday. You just mentioned it, but someone was sort of suggesting that it can be challenging when you're sort of building an internal community, because you're driven by passion, but that can make it very sort of personal and emotive, and perhaps not therefore have the other skill set that helps actually move the project forward. So
it can be really hard. And I'm a really positive person, so I try not to go into this stuff too much. You're dealing with people's health, and that means sometimes it doesn't always go well, and that sometimes means people are really unwell, and you have to deal with that as well, and that's really tough. And organisations aren't going to fix all these health problems that we have. But I think as long as they do the right thing by those people to support them, that's what's really important.
Yeah, it's a marriage, isn't it, between the organisation and the individuals themselves in terms of achieving the best outcomes for health. Like the organisation can't be completely responsible, but the individuals, employees, they do need the help and support.
Yeah,
but they have to sort of work together.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really tough. And I think sometimes, you don't always get the buy-in that you would like or need, and that can feel really deflating. It's about finding the people. There will be somebody out there in your organisation that believes in what you're trying to do. And it's about finding those people as well to help you on that journey. And just remembering the small steps and successes. I think sometimes you can look back and think, oh, we've not achieved what we needed to. We're not where we need to be. But reflect on what you have achieved and the small steps and progress that you might have made. But yeah, it can be really hard. And there'll be somebody in your business that doesn't think you're doing it right. And there'll be somebody in your business who thinks you could be doing more and you're not doing enough. And you need to listen to that feedback and reflect, but also, just remember where you've started and where you've come from.
Yeah.
Focusing on the positives.
And not to keep dragging it back to data, but then the data is important as well, right? Because you don't want to be making a decision one way or the other based on purely anecdotal evidence. One person saying, I really don't like this, right, let's scrap it.
Yeah.
Or one person saying, I absolutely love this intervention, let's do it. And that's what you pile everything into. It's the data is giving you a way of making a more measured decision.
Yeah, and somebody yesterday was talking about and I loved it, and I'm going to remember it for forever now. I think the won'ts and don'ts. You'll always have a population of people who won't get involved and don't want to get involved. And how can you tackle those people and try and make that majority smaller and smaller and smaller so it becomes a minority? But again, focusing on those people can sometimes feel like you're treading through treacle. It's really hard to make change in that population. Don't forget you've made a huge impact on, I think this example was there was 15% won'ts and don'ts, but don't forget the huge impact you've had on the 85% who are participating and engaged. So again, that back to your question, that can be really challenging when you're focusing on trying to get more people engaged and that won't and don't population that don't want to get involved.
Can we ask for some career advice?
You personally?
Scenario is Paul is. He's done a business degree and he's he's pretty passionate about wellbeing. He's got personal motivation and would like to sort of make some moves into this field. Where do you think he starts, and what would you suggest to Paul?
So let's say he's in that organisation of 10, where it just feels so out of reach because there's nobody responsible for wellbeing and there's not a job he could go and apply for. I'd encourage him to go and speak to his leader and share his personal passion and see and his ideas that he has for the organisation of 10 and how he can get involved. Again, just start making some change. So, is his personal passion running? Mm-hmm. Does he want to organise a run club? Is his personal passion around neurodiversion? Does he want to do some education in that space? What is it and how does he want to make a start? If he's in a bigger organisation, I'd encourage him to go and speak to his people team and find out who his wellbeing person is if they've got one. And again, how can he get involved? There'll be a community of people and just start making change. Connecting with leaders on LinkedIn, you'll learn so much. You'll connect with great people coming to events like this. Get yourself out there in that space and start building that brand in the wellbeing space if that's where you want to play.
Join the Working Well community, obviously.
That is a nice thing about if you are in an organisation that does have an internal community for wellbeing. That is a really nice thing. You don't need to be qualified for that. You could be a junior person entering the organisation and still have a role to play there. And
have you seen any of the advocates move into a more formalised role within your organisation or gone elsewhere?
Yeah, so some of the people who were in the wellbeing community initially at Gymshark worked in customer service, and then after kind of 3 or 4 years ended up working in the people team.
Right.
So not in a full-time wellbeing role, but in a people role where they could have impact on culture and people. So it's a great avenue, I think, if you want to kind of look at getting into HR as a career, to get that step in building those relationships and connections. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Amazing.
That's cool. Can I ask one final question about advice? So if you were going to go back, so maybe you're not speaking to Paul now, but if it was almost advice to a younger version of yourself, knowing what you know now, is there anything that you'd say to that person setting out Put you on the spot there.
Yeah, you have. Oh God, there's lots, isn't there? I think it's just being kind to yourself. I think, what we're doing here is about being kind for all these other people, but sometimes we're not necessarily that kind to ourselves. And in the past, I've had to deal with situations to support other people that have been really had a huge impact on my own mental health. And that's really hard. And if I give myself advice back to those moments, would I go and support those people again? Yes, I would. But would I have made sure at that time I had the tools to help myself when I was supporting those people? I think that's really important. We've all got our own lived experiences. But then when you're helping other people in that space, that can be really tricky and can be quite triggering. So it's making sure you've got your own support network to get you through that personally when you're helping those other people.
Yeah, it's really valid, isn't it?
Yeah.
If if you're in a professional, therapist role, like as a psychotherapist or something, and not that I'm saying that was the seat that you were taking, but you have it's good clinical practice to have supervision and regular support, and I guess there is perhaps a thought that people doing jobs like this, or mental health first aiders, wellbeing champions, are vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because of what they're doing as a job.
Yeah, and I think there's times as well where you have to just be brave to say, I can't do this at the moment. I'm not in the right place myself to be a mental health first aider at this moment in time, but I'm going to focus on myself and then I'll be back. And I think it's being really honest with yourself about your own well-being, and whether you are in a situation to help people.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Ace.
Thanks,
So I guess last question would be, well, where can people find you if you want them to find you?
I don't want anyone to find me.
On stage today.
On stage today at the Watercooler, yeah.
Talking about all things data to drive your wellbeing and reward strategy.
Taking notes.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Over on LinkedIn, Amanda Moore.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Good luck with your session.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Stop recording